Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another evening of Northshire Presents. Thank you all so much for being here with us tonight. For those of you who don't know me, I am Rachel Person. I'm the event manager for Northshire Bookstore in Saratoga Springs, New York. Here, as I often am these days, with my friend and colleague, David Wood, event manager for Northshire Bookstore in Manchester Center, Vermont. A couple of quick notes before we get started. First of all, as you're coming in, you probably noticed that we are recording this evening's program. It will be up on our YouTube channel at some point in the near future. But don't worry, those of you who have your cameras on, we have the settings arranged so that it is only recording those of us who are unmuted and speaking. So as long as you stay muted, you will not be in that YouTube recording for perpetuity. In light of that, please make use of the chat at any point throughout the evening that you like, with any comments or questions that you might have, and David and I will be happy to relay those. Also, in light of that, David will be putting in just a moment a link in the chat to a blog post on our Notes from the Shire blog, which includes all of the titles that will be discussed this evening for your convenient browsing and shopping. And we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for your incredible support. Indie book selling is never easy. I've been in the store every day this week, and I'm reminded of that over and over and over again. But we could not do this without all of you. And all of us at both Northshire Bookstore locations are incredibly grateful for your loyalty and support over these crazy couple of years we've been having. So thank you all so much for being here with us tonight at our last event of 2021. And why don't you take it away and introduce the guest tonight?
Thank you so much, Rachel. Yeah, it's the last event of the year, and we got here. Rachel and I were just talking about it. Well, welcome everyone. First up, we'll have Katrina Cruz from Hachette Book Group. Katrina, you've got a slideshow for us. Tell us about your books.
Hi, thank you everybody for coming, and I'm so excited to share with you some possible last minute gift giving ideas. Everything I am presenting to you right now is available and available in the store. And so I'm starting with our youngest readers. Let's see. Let's see. There we go. So the first book I'm sharing is Hello Star. And 6 years ago, the author's son asked her, "Did you know that stars die? Isn't that sad?" And so that inspired her to write this book about a child's love for the stars. And I know growing up with my daughter, she is always, we've always looked at the moon and said, we're both looking at it, even if we're not in the same place. And this book has that sort of feel. So every night the girl says goodnight to her star. And as she gets older, she continues to do so. And then as she goes to college, she studies astronomy, and eventually she becomes an astronaut and goes into space and gets to actually get closer to her star. Next up, a book for graphic novel readers. This really works for middle grade all the way up through adulthood. This book is so inspiring to me. It's about a Blackfoot mother and son who decide to go on a road trip, and they cross out of Canada into the United States. But when they get to the US border, the customs agent says, "What nation are you from?" And they answer Blackfoot. And they say, "No, are you US or Canadian?" And they say, "We're Blackfoot." And so they're refused entrance into the United States. And when they try and go back into Canada, they're refused entrance back into Canada for the same reason. And they spend 5 days in the no man's land between the two countries. And both the author and the illustrator are Indigenous people in this one. Next up, for middle grade readers and a little older, we have a book filled with sorcery, magic, and science. And this is the third book in Chris Colfer's Tales of Magic series. These are wonderful fantasy novels that are so enthralling. The quote on the right is actually from a posting to Instagram. And I will say this, I grew up, or I watched Glee growing up, and to see now Chris Colfer writing books, I actually think he's a better author than he was an actor in Glee. Moving on to adult books, though, For the Wolf really can work as a crossover also for YA readers and older teens. As the only second daughter born in centuries, Red has one purpose, and that is to be sacrificed to the wolf in the woods, and in hope that he will return the world's captured gods. Red is almost relieved to go. She's plagued by dangerous powers that she can't control, and she knows that in the wilder woods, she can't hurt those she loves. But as legends go, they lie, and the wolf is a man and not a monster. His magic is a calling, not a curse, and she doesn't know how to use it. The monsters, the gods, have become there to swallow up the woods and her world as a whole. This is a debut fantasy novel. It's dark, it's romantic, it's really unforgettable, and you realize that the wolf might not be the only danger lurking in the woods. So this book is, The Calling for Charlie Barnes, is more than 10 years in the making. Joshua Ferris is a writer who writes kind of dark, amusing books. This is a poignant novel. It explores a dysfunctional family, which is based on his own. It's the family patriarch one day calls up everyone he knows and he says he's dying of pancreatic cancer. But it turns out he was just self-diagnosing himself from the internet. And that is just the first of many, many 90-degree turns this book takes. It just, every time I thought I knew where it was going, it went somewhere else about 20 pages later. It really is a tender portrait of a man whose desperate need to be loved is his downfall. He gets married many, many times. It is funny. I laughed out loud. I shouted at the book in anger, and I may have even shed a tear as I was reading it. All right, next up is probably one of my favorite books from the fall. I know it's also a Northshire favorite. Debut novel based on the real life of Sven Ormsson, who was a man who during World War I left his home in Stockholm, Sweden, and decided to move to a place that was halfway between Sweden and the North Pole, so very cold and lonely. And he becomes a miner, but he gets caught in a mining accident and disfigured. But ultimately, this is an amazing book of how we all need people and how we all fit in. And it is just, this is the book, if I didn't know what to give someone, I would probably give them. It really has a feeling like Annie Proulx writing. So this is an interesting, it's a memoir told in essay forms. It's not a book to be plowed through. You need to savor this book in little bits, because otherwise you will be left as like a sobbing rag on the floor, because they are so powerfully written. It's 9 essays about the quiet, dark moments in life. It captures both small moments and then the bigger moments as well. And I know when I say that, it doesn't sound like a gift book, especially for the holidays, but the writing is so good in this book, it will stay with you for months, if not years, and it actually proves to be a really thoughtful gift. All right, I'm going to say a word that I'm not supposed to say out loud, but it's spelled differently. Best wishes, warmest regards is the book of everything Schitt's Creek. During the pandemic, almost everybody I know ended up watching this show. sometimes multiple times through. This book, written by the Levies, the father and the son, it's a celebration of the series, the town, the characters. It captures the essence of the whole show and why it worked. There are so many amazing little sides in here. You have profiles of the characters. You have profiles of special episodes. You have behind the scenes features. And then there's an illustrated catalog of all of David's sweaters, all of Moira's wigs, all of Moira's vocabulary and what they actually mean, how to be more like Alexis. It's just so much fun and so well put together. It's a coffee table book that you will be browsing through. I actually gave a copy to a fellow rep who said it may be her favorite book she has ever gotten. How the word is passed. As you can see, this has been named to just about every 2021 best of list of the year, including President Obama's. It is a deeply researched exploration into the legacy of slavery and its imprint on American history. Clint Smith takes readers on a tour of the remnants of our slavery's past, including Thomas Jefferson's Monticello, Angola Prison, which is the largest maximum security prison in the US and was built on the site of a former plantation, where many enslaved people came from. The author, he's a poet, a scholar, a teacher, he's an intellectual, but this book reads so beautifully and it really helps you realize. When he spoke to us, he was saying, I never realized growing up, but as I went to my school that was named after a slave owner, I ended up walking down 5 streets, all also named for slave owners, and just how much the impact is still going on today. History lovers and Hamilton fans both will really enjoy Hero of Two Worlds. Mike Duncan wrote The Storm Before the Storms and is the host of the Revolutions podcast. It is the story of the Marquis de Lafayette's lifelong quest to defend the principles of liberty and equality. He had a 50-year career at the heart of the Age of Revolution. He fought for both sides of the Atlantic. He was a soldier, a statesman, an idealist, a philanthropist, and an abolitionist. As a teenager, he ran away from France to join the American Revolution. He returned home a national hero and then helped launch the French Revolution. For history lovers, this is so readable, so compelling. It is just an absolutely amazing book. For something a little different. A Libertarian Walks into a Bear. This is written by another Vermont author, and it's about the town of Goffstown, New Hampshire, which basically they decided that they were going to stop all public funding. And so, they stopped funding the police, they stopped funding the fire department, the schools, and they ended up stopped funding for trash collection and everything else. You laugh at this book, but you also shake your head because, of course, when you go off the grid, the bears come back. And that is just what happened. The bears come and try and take over the town. As someone said, it is sometimes funny, sometimes terrifying tale of what happens when government disappears into the woods, complete with gunplay, adventure, backstabbing politicians. It's the ultimate story of the quintessential American experiment, to live free or die, perhaps from a bear. Nala's World. This Dean Nicholson is a Scottish man who decided that he was going to solo cycle around the world. He wanted to learn as much as he could about our troubled planet. Then, while he was on a remote Bosnian mountain road, he came across an abandoned kitten. he couldn't leave this bedraggled creature that was looking up at him and mewling. So he put her on his bike and he smuggled her across the border into Montenegro and nursed her back to health with the help of local vets. He hadn't realized he was going to get a travel companion, or what he would learn from her. But this heartwarming true story is about a life-changing friendship between a man and his rescued cat. They traveled the rest of the world together, and he had a special basket for her on the front of his bike. So for people who just want a bit of laughter in their life, I don't need to tell anybody who David Sedaris is. What this book is his second set of diary entries. So this is his diary from 2003 to 2020. It explores lots of topics, from him coming to terms with his success as a writer and an entertainer in many ways, to his ventures with his husband, their house in Normandy, his father's final years, and also his sister's suicide. But it's all told in diary entries, which are as good as his essays. Just very, very entertaining. For the science lover on your list, I have The Age of AI. This one is kind of amazing to me because the third ranked author is actually the Dean of Artificial Intelligence at MIT, and he is the lowest ranking author on this book. We have a former Secretary of State, the former Google CEO, and the MIT computing dean. This looks at how AI is transforming human society and what it means to all of us. It's about our relationships with knowledge and how we transform society and how we are going to prepare for this in the coming years. And then lastly, this amazing gift book, again, a coffee table book, but useful, covers both snowboarding and skiing. It'll take you from Colorado to Hokkaido, Japan, where storms dump more than 60 feet of snow every year. There'll be countless slopes around the world to add to your bucket lists, from Alaska to Morocco, plus not just the slips themselves, but other activities in the areas, for going on the longest toboggan run in Europe, getting up close with elk in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, sampling the cuisine in the Dolomites. So grab your skis and your snowboards. This guide will tell you where you want to go next. And that is it for my recommendations. Thank you very much. And I'm going to stop sharing now.
Thank you so much, Katrina. That was great. I know my list has gotten a little bit longer. Thanks. Next up, we've got Kate Sullivan from Random House Kids. She's also got a screen to share with us. Kate, tell us about your books.
I might need help again.
No problem.
Right.
Share screen.
I did share screen. I got to my presentation that I would like to share, and
then there'll be a blue box at the bottom of that says share.
Thank you. I knew I missed something. Now, can you see just my screen, or do I need to make it bigger?
At the top of your screen, there's a little button that looks like it's a rectangle on a thing that will make it go to the left. Keep moving your mouse to the left to start the presentation. So at the top of your screen, there's a button that looks like a rectangle with a line coming down. It looks sort of like an old-fashioned screen on a stand. And if you press that, it will begin. There you go. Press that.
Okay, maybe I have to do it twice.
There you are.
All right. If I can manage this now. See, I'm so much better with the paper and things. Okay. Thank you for inviting me tonight. And appropriate for New England, And I think this book is so appealing right now because we haven't really had too much snow to fight through yet, but it's the most adorable friendship between two unlikely characters, a fox and a hare, as they experience their first snow. So it's great for little kids. It's great for families. The nice thing about this is that it will sell after Christmas because it's snow and it's going to be snowy up here in New England till what, like May, maybe? So I think we've got a good long sales time for this. And it's from the author and illustrator of The Tree That Was Meant to Be, or That's Meant to Be, that was a big hit last year. And it was a very quiet, nature-oriented, kind of a Charlie Brown Christmas where all the animals came together. So this author illustrator has got a real gift for making the outdoors very charming for people who might not be as comfortable in the outdoors. And then there's Dream Street, which takes us back to what looks like a wonderful summer in the neighborhood. And Tricia Elam Walker and her cousin, Aqua Holmes, have not written books together before, but they're cousins. And they grew up in the same neighborhood outside Boston. And this is an absolutely gorgeous book. The words, as well as the pictures, about community and neighborhood and the place where your dreams start when you're a child. Currently, Aqua has an exhibit of her poetry, which features a lot of the art from this book at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, if anybody wants to go out and have a little road trip. And it's been talked about for some of those awards that I won't mention because that will jinx them for the early part of next year from the librarians. But it's really quite a lovely book about getting to know the people who you're going to grow up to be someday. And then to go from the sublime to the completely ridiculous, yes, a dragon in underwear. The first book sold so well, we have a sequel. In the first book, our little tiny knight became Sir Cole. He wanted to be a knight so badly, and now he's in charge of the kingdom, but he needs an assistant, and he can't quite find the right one, except when he thinks about the cleverness of his frenemy, the dragon in underwear. And he goes to find him, and he tries to get him hired so badly. I need you to work with me. You're the perfect mind I need. And the dragon doesn't want to. And finally, Cole figures out the dragon doesn't want to because he can't read. And a good assistant who can't read is not a very good assistant sometimes. So it tells a wonderful, gentle story about how Sir Cole has to figure out how to offer help to get what he needs. And our dragon has to figure out how to accept help and admit that he doesn't know everything yet. And they're a lot of fun and a lot of completely goofy things that I get to sell all the time. I listen to Katrina's presentation, and I'm sure when I listen to Mike, I'll be like, they're so serious and intellectual. And yeah, I have the underwear dragon. But next up, we have Invasion of the Unicorns. Unicorns are very popular these days, and our author illustrator, David Bedrecki, last year, a couple years ago, he wrote Sumo Kitty, which is one of my favorite picture books of all time. So when I saw that he was doing a unicorn book, I thought, okay, what can he possibly do that no one else has done? Because there are a lot of unicorn books out there. In this one, our unicorn pictured on the cover is actually an alien. He's come down in his assignment as Agent 007, dressed as a unicorn to decide whether or not Earth is worth conquering. And then he gets to Earth and he meets people and he gets treated well and he's so adorable. He's starting to wonder if maybe Earth might be a better place for him to live. And it's really cute. It's smart. It's about finding home. And it's unicorns, which are not going to stop selling for quite some time now. And then I'm sure everybody knows that Backlist has been selling almost as well as Frontlist for the past year or so. Sometimes it's because that's all there is left when all the new titles sell out. The Barnabas Project was a new title last year. It got a lot of critical acclaim, even won the Governor General's Award in Canada. And it's also written and illustrated by the Fan Brothers, of which there are not just two, Eric and Terry. There's a third Fan brother named Devin. I have no idea which one does which parts of the work, but their books are stunning. And in this one, our little elephant mouse combination, Barnabas, is kind of in the land of misfit toys. He's one of the toys that didn't turn out quite right. So the unperfect toys are all relegated to the basement of the toy store. and they hear a rumor that maybe they're going to be destroyed to make room for perfect toys. And he sees a little crack in his dome and decides, you know what? This is it. This is the time. It's a great story about unlikely bravery, a great chase scene through the sewers of their city, and a book that ends with a happily ever after where all the animals have a place to live. And it doesn't matter if you're perfect or not, you're still accepted. And The Creature of Habit is another, I keep making a lot of COVID references. I've got to get out of this, but one more, where we've all become creatures of habit, whether we have embraced or clutched onto our old habits or made some new ones to try and adjust. And that's what our character in Jennifer E. Smith's The Creature of Habit is about. Everything's fine, everything in its place, until a new creature comes to the neighborhood. Doesn't do things exactly the way we always did them. And what do you do when that happens? Do you run away? No, this is my place. And it's a wonderfully comic look at how change is possible and realizing that change does not have to be immediate and it doesn't have to be everything. And you can both become better by changing. It's never just one changing. And I can think of a lot of grown-ups that I would like to give this book to right now in the same way that I gave Grumpy Monkey to some of my grown-up friends a few years ago. It fits the purpose, and we don't need a big self-help book. Sometimes we need a picture book for self-help. And then there's Narwhal, and he takes a place, he takes inspiration from Jack Black's School of Rock, where he starts his own school of awesomeness. Of course, he's awesome. Can he teach his best friend Jelly to be awesome as well? And can they all have their favorite waffles in the meantime? They're funny. There are so few pictures and so few words in these books, but somehow Ben Clanton is a genius about getting his message across. When we started with this, our Canadian publisher had no idea what they had on their hands with Narwhal and Jelly. And that was back when graphic novels were kind of just finding their way, and really, the sections weren't very big. Now they're huge. And, Narwhal will stumble along the way. He'll laugh at his own cluelessness and he'll carry on, just like every book. So these are great. Kids love them. Parents love them. Narwhal and Jelly even have their own plush, which is somewhere in my house, but I'm not going to go get that to show now. But it's adorable, and the series has done very well. This is book 6. It could go on forever. And another reference to a movie, of course, whether you know the movie Monster Slayer Van Helsing or not, how could you not be amused by Ham Helsing, Vampire Slayer, a graphic novel about a family of pigs who are vampire hunters. It's fun, it's simple, it's very young, and graphic novels, they're where it's at these days. And God, I'm watching too much Beaver reruns in the middle of the night. And this is just, it's so cute. It's a series. Number 2 will be out in the summertime. And another graphic novel, a little different. How awful is it to be the new kid in a new school in middle school? To top it off, our main character has OCD, which she is dealing with, and she makes a lot of her decisions by rolling a 20-sided D&D dice or die. And it's got something for everyone. I have a group of adult book buyers who just think the D&D part is everything they need to be able to sell it. But nothing is too heavy-handed. There's somebody say, oh, it's a Dungeons and Dragons thing. We're all going to burn. But no, it's, first of all, Dungeons and Dragons kids are probably the smartest kids in the classroom. And then it deals with the fact that this character very openly shares things about her OCD. And it's a real thing. And I think it's great for kids who may have it or have some kind of related condition to be able to see themselves in the book. And also it's good for kids who don't have it and might need a little better understanding. So all that in a graphic novel. And it's in paperback, and it's been out for 2 whole days, and we're already taking reorders. And then to get a little more serious, in February, it will be 10 years since Wonder was published. Who knew that a book that originally had a 5,000 copy print run would have sold more millions than I can even think about right now. So here we have a new book from R.J. Palacio. When we heard this was coming, we had no idea what it would be about. So I read it immediately, and it had nothing to do with wonder except the same quality of writing and the passion for the characters. It's a Western. It's history. You learn about photography. It's a kidnapping story, cowboys, and some ghosts. But most of all, it's a story of what one little boy will do to rescue his father, who's been kidnapped. And it's absolutely fascinating. And I think it's a great book for a family read. It's good for classrooms, and it's good for the independent reader too, who just wants a good story they can get lost in. And then back middle grade, Nick Stone, who everybody knows from Dear Justice and Dear Martin, also writes books for the younger middle grade. And Fast Pitch is based quite a bit on her own childhood, where she was a championship softball player. And she gives her character, Shanice, a whole bunch more to deal with, because there's the softball, there's being on a team that's the only all-Black team, and also this stuff going on in the family, which there is in most middle grade books, where she needs to keep her focus and make sure that she can be on the winning team. I won't give it away whether or not her team wins. It's a great sports book, as well as a book about kids and growing up. And then Loteria, which I never pronounced quite correctly because I studied German and not Spanish in high school. And has anybody heard of the Loteria card game? Which I had not until I read this book. And then I did some research, and it's a little tarot, it's a little Day of the Dead. You learn a whole bunch of interesting things just by looking up what Loteria is about. And then in this book, the main character, Clara, is Mexican. They live in Mexico, and her parents own a restaurant. And there's also some mystical stuff going on, especially the fact that life and death are characters, and they're playing the Loteria game, and whoever wins gets Clara. And it's got so many twists and so much wonderful information about Mexican tradition and food and families, and again, sacrifices that are made for others, that it's really a fascinating book. And if I learned things I never knew before, I'm sure a lot of kids out there will be fascinated with this book. It was our rep pick, and that's 12 reps all getting together and agreeing that this is the book for the independent market. Rumple Buttercup. I love this book. It is one of the goofiest, most ridiculous books that sells well. We published it 2 years ago. It's written by Matthew Gray Gubler, who for a long time played a very serious, tightly wrapped genius psychologist, criminal psychologist on the show Criminal Minds. In his real life, he is anything but tightly wrapped or serious or psychologist. And he has so much fun in his life. And he wrote this weird little book about Rumple Buttercup, who is a creature who lives in the sewer. I'm spending a lot of time underground with these presentations. And the only friends he has are made up of the stuff in the sewer. It's really kind of sad, but at the same time, you realize he's got so much hope that someday it'll be different. And one day, as he's making his way in usual, somebody kind of looks down in the sewer and says, "Hey, you gonna come out for the parade?" And he realizes he's been seen. And it's that really kind of sweet moment, which so many kids need. Kind of, when you think about how some schools put out, the friend bench, when there's somebody who's alone, go ahead and go sit with them. This is the same kind of thing, except they bring Rumple up out of the sewer, and he has some new friends. And it's just so joyous that you just can't help but want to give it to an adult as well as a kid. And then my favorite topic, murder. Thrillers are a big deal. YA thrillers are selling like crazy. Karen Mcmanus, who's one of ours here in New England, has written her 5th book in 4 years. And I've read them all. I've even read the 6th book that doesn't come out until next fall. Every one is unique. She's a rare talent, kind of like the Stephen King of mystery thrillers for young adults, except not quite as gory. And most of them are standalone. Most of them take place here in New England. And You'll Be the Death of Me is like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, because it's three kids who used to be friends and somehow accidentally end up spending the day together, which would be fine, except then there's a murder. And then they think somebody saw them see the murder. So they've got to figure out how to solve the murder and get back to school by that night, because there's an award ceremony and one of the characters has to present an award to her parents. So it's a little jumbled, and there's something in there called the murder van. So it's just a lot of fun. It's clever, and it'll keep you guessing right up until the moment when the characters become smarter than us and reveal what's really going on. And once you've read Karen, Holly Jackson is fighting for spots on the bestseller list along with Karen. Sometimes Holly sells more, and she's only got 3 books, but A Good Girl's Guide to Murder was the start of everything for her. It's a great book about a girl who decides to do her senior class project as a podcast and go back and look at a 5-year-old murder and solve the murder. And it was fascinating, got great reviews. Quickly after that, we get Good Girl, Bad Blood, another bestseller. Now, Pip, the main character, has decided to stop being a podcaster, and she's like, maybe it's time for me to be a regular person, except she gets pulled right back in for one more adventure because she's now being stalked, and she's got to solve what might lead to her own murder if she doesn't solve it, if that makes any sense. So she's back on the road. This is the final part of the trilogy. One of the coolest things about this being a trilogy and all available now is that you don't have to wait a year between books like we do for all the other ones up until now. So thrillers are great. And then just a little fantasy, because even though I don't read a lot of fantasy, I know the rest of the world does. And Skin of the Sea is a unique debut fantasy with a black mermaid. It's the first of at least 2 books, maybe 3 or 4. It's being compared to Children of Blood and Bone and the current bestseller, Beasts of Prey. And even Nicola Yoon, who writes romance for us but knows a good story, referred to this as epic and original. And mermaids. Mermaids are the new unicorns. So I think we'll have some winners with that. And then I just have a very quick preview of what'll happen next spring after we all recover from Christmas. And Lane Smith has done the cutest bunny book in the world in A Gift for Nana. It's a great book for springtime. It's a great book for Easter because bunny. It's also a great book for Mother's Day and Grandparents' Day in September. So we've got the whole year laid out for this one, and it's absolutely adorable while our little bunny searches for the perfect gift for Grandma. And Max and the Midnights, Volume 3, another great case where you can get the whole series at once come March 1st, and then you can read through. Max is a funny character. These are as great for adults as they are for kids because they've got jokes that work at both age levels. And in this particular one, Max is in trouble because Max finds out there's a twin. It could be an evil twin. So he's covered all bases with this, and it's knights. So it attracts boys, girls, just about everybody who's interested in knights and funny, funny books. Maisie Chen's Last Chance is, I think it's Lisa Yee's masterpiece because she's written many books. I mean, starting out with Millicent Min, Girl Genius, 20 years ago? And she's gotten all kinds of stuff in between that. And this is her first regular middle grade novel with us. She's done superhero books before. And Maisie and her mom moved from California to Minnesota briefly to help out her grandparents in their Chinese restaurant. They are the only Chinese family in town. And she starts for the first time to experience a little bit of racism and being different from the rest of her neighborhood. But she also finds a way to make peace between some of the regular people in town, help Grandma and Grandpa, and she starts making her own fortunes and puts them in the fortune cookies at the restaurant. So instead of people getting random advice they're getting advice that maybe they need a little bit. So this is another one that it's our rep pick for the spring because we just all found it so charming. So that's one of my favorites. And last but not least, as readers of adult books, many of you may be familiar with Akwaeke Emezi. They also write young adult, starting with Pet, which was a National Book Award shortlist last year, and just raved about by both adult readers and teen readers as well. And Bitter is back. It's not the sequel, but a prequel. And it tells the story of Pet's mother and her world in which she really had to, fight for recognition. She was an artist. She's fictional, but she was an artist. And about the power of youth and speaking up and being able to protest and make change. And that's everything I have for you tonight. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Kate. We really appreciate that. I think we were, Rachel, I believe we were talking just on Tuesday night with our bookseller book chat about how in YA, it's the thrillers this year that are the big sellers. All right, well, last but not least, our final presenter for tonight is Mike Katz from Publisher Group West, Two Rivers. Mike, tell us about the books that you've got.
Well, thank you, Delvith, and I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I have a wide range of books for you. Some are available now. Some are available in hardcover now, about to come out in paperback, and some will be coming out in the winter. Let me start with this book here, Rock Cut. By the way, I'm doing this the old-fashioned way. I'm not sharing my screen. I'm just showing the books as if I was sitting at a big table with all of you, which is the way I really would like to do things, and I can't wait to do that again. My first book here, a book called Rock Concert by Mark Myers. A few years ago, Mark wrote a book called Anatomy of a Song, which is the top, he feels the top 30 songs of the last 30 years in terms of rock and pop. Mark has a regular column in the Wall Street Journal. Rock Concert, his newest book, which is available now, is an oral history of the rock concert, starting in the 1950s with the midnight shows in LA, through Monterey Pop Festival, Woodstock, Altamont, and ending in the 1980s with Live Aid. It covers interviews, musicians, producers, the people who do the stage shows, right across. This is a great book for people, obviously people of my age that grew up with a rock concert, people within, my generation or right after my generation. Just a fabulous little book and really well worth your time. Probably don't have to do much introduction to this. This is Lily King's new short story collection. I have read all of Lily King's novels except for her first one, which was The Pleasing Hour. But I've never read her short stories. And what I've always been so impressed by Lily is her warmth and her humanity. You just love her characters and you love curling up with her books. Let me read to you, but I've never read her, as I said, never read her short stories. Let me read to you what the New York Times said. It's on last week's Editor's Choice. As in her novels, many of the stories in King's first collection of short fiction are preceded by loss and ignited by desire. Readers are reminded that what we call coming of age doesn't happen in a single moment at 14, but that part of being human is to keep discovering new corners of being. In our time of anxiety and isolation, King writes stories to curl up in. They're beautiful stories, really well worth your time. Talking about another book that's going to make you feel much better. This is Small Things Like These. Claire Keegan, an Irish author, has written this short, as you can tell, small, you can read it in less than 2 hours, piece of fiction. It's the #1 indie select title for December. It's on the New England Independent Booksellers Association bestseller list right now. Set in the 1980s, a coal merchant named Bill Furlong, who has 5 daughters, one Sunday comes across a horrible discovery while delivering coal to a local convent. We find out later that it ties in with, historically, the Magdalene laundry scandal. Bill has to make a decision. Should he do the smart thing and to ignore it and ignore this discovery, or should he do the right thing? Well, Bill does the right thing. And it's just a gorgeous book. It's a great little holiday book. You can tell it looks, and it's not specifically a Christmas book, but it happens during the holidays. Wonderful little book. Switch to All the Young Men. Now this book is coming out, is available in hardcover now. It's coming out in paperback, I believe. Let me just look at the date here. It's coming out in, no, I'm sorry, it is in paperback now. The author, Ruth Coker Burks, back in the 1980s, found herself in a hospital in Arkansas. And there was a room that was actually had police tape on it and food, trays of food left outside the hospital door. The doctors, the nurses, and barely the doctors would go in the room. It was a man dying of AIDS. And this is back in the 1980s. No one would go near the man. She, Ruth, went in there because he was calling out, comforted him, and found out that everyone had ignored him, including his family. Ruth became a savior for countless hundreds of men dying of AIDS back in the day when they didn't know what the disease was, what it would do. She actually wound up not only comforting them in their last days, their families abandoned them, and she actually buried them on her own. She eventually became an aide to then Governor Clinton in Arkansas, and has become an AIDS activist for years. It's interesting, when the epidemic, our current epidemic, first started, a friend of mine said to me, "Isn't it amazing? This is the first time we've ever been involved in an epidemic like this." So we are forgetting something. It may not have involved you and me. However, it involved a whole slew of our society, and far deadlier and far worse at that time. It's beautifully written. She was focused on, she was featured on People magazine last year. And again, I recommend this. I recommend all these books. So I shouldn't keep saying that, but I do recommend this book highly. Next, and as opposed to what Kate just said, I do have some fun books, Kate. They're not all serious. Muriel Barbary, the author of Elegance of the Hedgehog, wrote a book that's out now called The Writer's Katz. And it's from, and there, I tell you a backstory. This is actually the Italian version of the book, which is published by Europa, by the way, which Europa sent us. It's interesting that it's the Italian version of the book because Muriel Barbary wrote it in French. But Europa is an Italian publisher and sent us early copies of the book. But The Writer's Katz is written from the cat's point of view. And the cats are a little upset that their mistress, who is, of course, Muriel Barbary, seems to not realize that they're really as much as important to her success as anybody else out there. The illustrations are just great. Let me see if I can get you a good one here. Like, for instance, the cat is eating at the table. It's funny, when I first got this, and it was only in Italian, a friend of ours who was the buyer at the Nantucket bookstores is Italian, was able to translate it for us because we went out there this summer. A really nice book, great for anyone who's not just a cat lover, a literary lover, or anybody that just likes a sweet book. Next, what do we have next? Oh, this book is coming out in, I believe, March. This is Stuart Onan's newest novel, Ocean State. And as some of you might know, Ocean State refers to Rhode Island, which is officially the Ocean State, which is where I live. Not giving anything away by saying that in the first line of the book, you find out that one teenage girl, will murder another teenage girl over a boy. That is not a spoiler alert because it's the first line of the book. The book is set in a small, slightly fictionalized town in Rhode Island called Ashaway. And that's exactly what happened. But Stuart Onan, who did a book called Last Night at the Lobster a few years ago, which is many people's favorite book. Stuart Onan is so good with his characters that you spend the whole book hoping that that's not going to happen, that the murder is not going to happen, because you don't want it to happen, because you get so involved with the characters. And yet it does. You know that it's going to happen. And when it does happen, you are just devastated. It's an amazing book. I really go out and get it when you see it in March. It'll be in hardcover, published from Atlantic Monthly. Grove Atlantic Monthly is one of our biggest publishers, best known. I have a second short story collection. This is coming out in February in paperback. This is the hardcover of it. It will have the same cover. Milk, Blood, Heat by Denzel Moniz. Very different than Lily King's collection. And you can tell by the title that this is a fervent, just such a powerful collection of short stories. It's set in Florida, mainly in the South in Florida. And the heat of these short stories will just blow you away. Some very odd stories, but stories that really, if you're not warm already, will really warm you up, but not in the way that Lily King warms you up, in a way that really will get your imagination and your juices flowing. Fabulous collection. And like I said, it'll be in paperback within the next month or so. The Good Girls. Now I have some books I don't have. I just will show you the cover. This is The Good Girls. Yes, Kate, this is a very serious book. I'm sorry. The Good Girls is, they classify it as true crime, but I wouldn't call it true crime. But it focuses on a horrible murder that happened in a small rural community in India, where two young girls that went out late at night to relieve themselves because there were no latrines, no bathroom facilities. The next morning were found hanging from a tree. But it's not so much the true crime aspect of it and who did it. What's amazing about it is that the town circled around the tree and would not let the authorities cut down the girls because they did not trust the authorities. They did not trust the police. They did not trust the politicians. And Sonia Filario, who's a reporter, dug into it, and it really shows the caste and class system in India and how powerful that was. It's an amazing book, and it's just very sad, obviously, but very powerful. The Delusions of Crowds. This came out is in hardcover as we speak. Coming out in paperback in the fall. I'm sorry, in the winter. It looks at why people, the subtitle is Why People Go Mad in Groups, and it looks at the history of mass hysteria. It doesn't necessarily focus on the current day, but it is so relevant to what's going on between COVID, between the election, and why people act the way they do in groups. And we can go on and on about how what that's like, but this book, he does a great job with William Bernstein. It was really one of our sleepers of last year. It sold surprisingly well for a very serious topic. Next up, end papers. Here's one of my Vermont authors. Alexander Wolf is the grandson of Kurt Wolf, the publisher who started Pantheon Books. Kurt Wolf and his wife fled Nazi Germany as it was taken over by the Nazis, came to the United States, and founded Pantheon Books, as many of you know, one of the preeminent publishers, imprints in this country. But by the way, Mr. Wolf lives in Cornwall, Vermont. What's fascinating about the book is not only the publishing side, but also what that family went through historically. My parents, my father was an Italian Jew who hid with his 5 sisters and his family in the mountains of Italy during World War II. My mother was a Catholic who lived in Rome. and they all have a story to tell. And if it wasn't for the fact that my father escaped the Nazis for years, I would not be here. Next up, Atlas of Extinct Countries. This is coming out in March. It's in hardcover now. I hate to say it, it's really hard to find in hardcover because it ran out of stock, but it will be in paperback. This is a fun book at those countries that, believe it or not, were actually real countries. And you read this and you think it can't be. There's no way there, but some of these countries only lasted a week, some a year. It's full of maps. It's great for travel sections. It's really a great little book. This is also from Europa. The Joy of Small Things. This is out currently. And this is a sweet little book. How can you go wrong with a little dachshund on the cover? The book is a collection of essays that Hannah Parkinson did for, I believe, the Guardian in England. And they're little pieces about just enjoying the little things in life, including dogs. She has a great passage about dogs, especially little dogs. And at the end of it, she says, I have to stop talking about this because the cat is getting jealous. It's really nicely done, great little illustrations throughout the book. You should be able to find them in your favorite bookstore right now. The Steal. Talk about a serious topic. This is Mark Bowden's latest book. He and a team of investigative journalists went throughout the country, and what they've done is interview those election officials, those administrators that resisted the stresses put on them, the pressures put on by the Trump administration to change the election. There's several books, including the Carl Woodward book out now, but basically those books look at the specifics around the Trump administration and within the Beltway. This goes around the country and investigates it. It's a great piece of investigative journalism. It was just released, it's in the stores now, and its publishing, official publication is on the date of the insurrection in January. Very big print on this. And if you've never read Mark Bowden, he of course is known for Black Hawk Down and Wayne 1968, but he's a wonderful writer and a great investigative reporter. Small Bodies of Water. This is a really nice little book coming from Canongate in February. This will be a hardcover. The author, Mina Minga Powles, she is of Malaysian and Chinese and white heritage. She's lived in many different countries, including Australia, and it's a nature book, and it sort of focuses on her love of swimming and water. But what she talks about the book is that water separates us and connects us. And looking at her personal background and her personal heritage and her growing up, she ties them together with her love of water. Really nicely done. This is from Canongate, a small English publisher. Now, I, believe it or not, have some children's books for you. I sell probably around, or represent probably around 200 different children's titles each year. The first one I want to show you is a middle reader graphic novel called Living with Viola. The main character is Livy. Livy is a young 10-year-old, she's a 10-year-old daughter of Chinese immigrants, starting a new school. She, of course, has all the normal problems you would have starting a new school. Plus, people make fun of her a little bit because of her background. Plus, she has severe anxiety disorder. And she's basically haunted by her alter ego, Viola, who is a personification of her anxiety disorders. But the illustrations show, it's kind of hard to show it here, but you could see Viola is in black, pestering her and following her wherever she goes. It's beautifully done. It's lighthearted in a lot of ways, but obviously very serious because it really deals with not only the problems of being a girl of color in basically a white school, but also deals with mental issues. And there's actually a guide and glossary in the back as a reference. Beautifully done. I don't read that many graphic novels, but I read that immediately. We have a publisher, one of our many different children's publishers is a Spanish publisher called Quinto De Luz. They produce their books on something called stone paper, which is they neither use water nor wood to create their paper. And if I could put this book in your hands right now, you could feel the quality of the paper. But they're really do a great job with their illustrators, which are often Spanish or Latin American illustrators, just vibrant colors. The color of your skin, if some of you may remember, a few years ago, there was a Crayola color called flesh color, which was a light tan. Well, there's only one problem with that. Not all of us have light tan flesh color skin. And there is, see if I can get this, show you this. There's a passage here. The young girl says, but your skin doesn't look like that. Your skin is a bit like the color of toast. And mine doesn't either. I'm kind of pale. Hopefully that can come through there. That gives you an idea also of the vibrancy and color of these illustrations. That's the color of your skin. Another Quinto De Luz book, For You, which is a multiracial family. And it just looks at their lives together and all the things that make their lives so beautiful and so wonderful. Here's one scene, 2 pages here. Your smiles light up the way for us as both of the children are going off to school. Let's see if I can show you that there. And again, vibrant colors. These books are always paper over board. And again, if you go to your local store, feel that paper, go to Northshire, feel the paper, and you'll see the quality of these books. 2 more children's books for you. And I believe these are both Groundwood, which is one of our best known publishers, a Canadian publisher. A Kid is a Kid is a Kid. This is a follow-up to a book called A Family is a Family is a Family. And it really looks at that kids are all individuals, and they have all individuals' way, and they are all, each kid is important in their own way. Let me show you. It's basically sort of a question and answer format. Here's a little boy asking one of his classmates, and the classmate says, not call her a girl or a boy, I can think of better things to ask than if I'm a boy or a girl. What a question. Hopefully you can see that. And there are questions like that throughout the book. Beautifully done. A Family is a Family is a Family was one of our bestsellers. This is a perfect book for a couple of pictures for you. I get asked why I always have my nose in a book. Books are my life. And lastly, another children's book, Anthony and the Gargoyle. And I believe, let me see, make sure the publisher on this is also from Groundwood. This is a wordless picture book. Anthony, ever since he was a young child, and now he's a little bit older now, maybe 3 or 4 years old, has had a rock as his in his room, as his sort of pet rock. Well, he doesn't realize that the pet rock can come alive. And the pet rock does come alive, and it's a little gargoyle. And there is a shot of him with his gargoyle pet. And they love each other, they're friends. One day, Anthony realizes, though, that, well, let's backtrack a little bit. His grandmother is sick and lives in Paris, and they're going to go visit her. And he goes with his pet gargoyle and his parents. They go to the Cathedral of Notre Dame, and then they both realize that this is where the gargoyle where his real home is. And the two, very sadly, have to separate. But the gargoyle, his little pet gargoyle, eventually lives in Notre Dame. It's a great look at friendship. It's a great look at loss. And it's a great look of the sacrifices we have to make for someone else. And that's it. I hope that's a pretty wide range of books there. I try to have some books that are pretty serious, some books that are fun. And either way, hopefully they're all enjoyable. I want to thank you again for having me.
Oh, thank you so much, Mike. That was great. Everyone, thank you so much tonight. Katrina, Kate, Mike, this has been fantastic. And audience, thanks so much. Thanks for another great year of virtual events. As we said, you can find all of tonight's books on our blog post. If you go to northshire.com and click on Notes from the Shire, it is the most current blog there. And I put the link in the chat a few times, but Rachel put it in once more. And finally, we recommend, if you want a particular book, to order it curbside. We can't guarantee that web orders will get to you if you're shipping it, but we can certainly fulfill it if it is in store. Everyone, thank you so much and have a great evening.
We will see you in the new year. Have a great night, everyone.
Thanks again.
You too. Take care.